Thank you for joining this webinar today, Preparing for Neonates, a live Q&A with Casandra Mensing and Rosemarie Crawford.
Yes.
I'd like to thank our sponsor, Royal Kitten, for providing support to make this webinar possible. It's a real pleasure to introduce our speakers today. I've learned an incredible amount from both of them. Casandra is the neonatal director with American Pets Alive and grew up in South Carolina, received a BA in psychology from Clemson University and moved to Austin in 2009. She quickly became a fixture at APA's Bottle Baby program and worked countless hours as a volunteer before being the neonatal ward manager for Austin Pets Alive. Rosemarie is the director of education programs at the National Kitten Coalition. She has had a long passion for helping animals, particularly kittens. She's also a licensed veterinary technician, co-founder of the National Kitten Coalition, and has almost 20 years of experience in animal welfare. Thank you so much for being here today, you guys. Let's go ahead and get started. We received a lot of questions before the webinar started. And we're going to try to get through as many questions as we can today. The first question that I have for both of you is, how are you doing and how has COVID-19 affected your roles in your organization?
Hi, it's Cassandra. I'll go ahead and jump in and answer that question. I'm super excited right now with my role, especially since I feel like for years I've been begging people to leave kittens alone. It's best for them not to be brought in to shelter environments. And here it's kind of like the tables have turned. Now people are going to get sick if you bring the kittens into the shelters. So it's creating this new movement that I'm super excited about. I'm also excited about all the convenience. I don't know about y'all out there, but like being able to just online shop a kitten, oh my gosh, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's so great. That way I don't have to, drive uptown, downtown, whatever. I literally can sit there and see the kitten's personality in the foster home. And anyway, that's my favorite thing right now. How about you, Rosemarie?
Thanks. Yeah, I'm doing okay, and we're doing okay. As an education organization, we of course have suspended our on-site workshops, and we're doing many more webinars. We've been doing webinars previously, but we've kind of kicked that up a notch, and we're offering additional webinars, and we've been doing not on-site training, but the webinar training instead. And so we have shelters and rescues who's, your fosters, your staff, they still need to be trained on how to care for kittens, especially, your new time fosters, and shelters are doing an amazing job expanding their foster programs and getting the animals out of the shelter and into foster homes. And that's just amazing and wonderful. And so we're still here to provide that training with resources and with webinar, web-based training for their shelter staff and volunteers.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And as I mentioned before, we did receive a large amount of questions prior to this webinar. So we're going to try to get through as many of those as we can. And if you have questions that come up, please feel free to, or questions that you came with, please feel free to chat them in the Q&A function on Zoom. So the next question is, with sick neonates, it's sometimes difficult to determine whether it's in the kitten's best interest to keep pushing to get them to thrive or relieve suffering through euthanasia. I realize there's no hard and fast rule to this tough decision making, but what symptoms and behaviors do you typically go off of to make these judgment calls?
All right, I'm going to jump on that one if that's okay. So at Austin Pets Alive, which I've been with since 2009 with the neonatal program, we have learned a lot of things about fating kittens. We've also learned that failure to thrive is actually not a thing for neonates. They are exactly like an adult cat. They're sick, you need to give them medicine. If they're hungry, you need to feed them. If they're, all these different things, is just miniature. So I feel like we should be treating these guys. If we would treat an adult cat, I think we should treat the neonatal as well. It should go both ways. We used to only euthanize for FIP, but there's been great studies now where there are treatments out there. Unfortunately, they're extremely expensive and hard to get a hold of. But that was the only reason we would euthanize. Fading kitten protocol is actually a very successful, I feel, solution to kittens who are fading. Usually it is from low blood sugar or being cold, low body temp. So doing the protocol, in my experience, we have seen kittens that look like they're on their way out bounce back. And then we've also seen kittens that, show very little signs of fading and that do pass. There's no rhyme and reason with it. And so it's very hard to look at one that you brought back and then look at another one just like it and be like, okay, I don't think this one's going to make it. So yes, I guess that's my long answer is if you would do it for an adult cat, you should do it for a neonatal cat.
Because we've been saying that too, it really is important to go ahead and treat those kittens. It's earlier on, there hadn't been a lot of studies about antibiotics in kittens or different medications with kittens. And so I understand that some veterinarians were reluctant to use some of the medications. But with especially shelter medicine and University of Florida, University California, Davis, all the great veterinary schools, they're doing so much more now with studies and really finding that, yeah, we can go ahead and use some of these medications on the kittens, and they do actually provide a lot of benefit, a lot of life-saving benefit in many cases. So yeah, fading kitten syndrome, that used to be that catch-all that people didn't know why the kitten wasn't doing so well. It was, a reason, as something to put down as the cause of death. But we know so much more now. And as Casandra said, with especially keeping kittens warm, keeping their blood glucose up, making sure they're being fed regularly to keep that blood glucose up. Sometimes Good Samaritans don't realize that kittens need a heat source. They can't regulate their own body temperature until they're 4 weeks old or so, and even after that they're not very good at it. And so kittens can become chilled very easily and very quickly, and that is just one of the big causes, in my opinion, of fading kitten syndrome. We get so many cold kittens, and if the Good Samaritans who find them, if the foster parents, if the staff knows that those kittens need to be kept warm, they need to have that outside source of heat. They can't just be bundled up in a blanket. They don't have enough heat source of their own. They need that external heat source. And just knowing that and providing that information to the caregiver can prevent a lot of cases of fading kitten syndrome.
Thank you so much. And there's a few people that have asked in the chat if we have a fading kitten protocol to share, and we do. So we will make sure to keep track of the resources that you all are mentioning and asking for, and get those over to folks afterwards.
Can I add?
Please, go ahead.
I just want to add one little thing as well. When we talk about heat, our body temperature is not adequate for kittens. I do see a lot of cute pictures of people putting kittens in their bras or in their shirts and are watching TV with their little neonates on top of them. Please remember, mom is 102 degrees, and so unless you guys are running that fever, hopefully not, you definitely want to just leave the kittens alone on a heating pad. It's going to be what's the best thing for them.
We're getting a few questions in the chat about Penicillin G. Do you want to touch on Penicillin G quickly, or talk about that?
So I love Penicillin G. If anyone has been to any of my apprentices or apprenticeships, thank you, Maddie's. Penicillin G is my favorite thing in the world. Super cheap, It lasts for a long time, and it's just, you know, within like 24 to 48 hours if it's working. So you're not wasting a lot of time waiting, you know, 7 days, 10 days, however long the prescription is to see it to work. So how we do it is we dilute our penicillin to a 6-to-1 ratio, 1 part penicillin, 6 parts LRS. And then we make sure any kittens with diarrhea that we administer that to them. And you'll know, like I said, within 24 to 48 hours, you'll start seeing like cow patty poop. All of a sudden, it will start having a form to it the very next day. It's just crazy. We are working on a Penicillin G study with the vets at American Pets Alive and some of them at Austin Pets Alive. So hopefully we'll get that out for you guys so your vets can jump on it. And I like to also say there was a lot of concern about allergic reactions. I have done this personally on like over 15,000 kittens, and I have not had one reaction to it from the Penicillin G. So no, I don't have any studies to back it up yet, but just knowing, you know, how quickly it works, how cheap it is, it's a godsend.
And can you repeat the dilution ratio?
Yes, it is a 1 part penicillin, so 1 cc of straight penicillin, diluted with your LRS, lactators, ringers, fluids, to 6 parts. How I like to do it is I like to get a 10 cc syringe and I go ahead and pull back a 1, and then I stick it in my LRS and I pull it down to the 7 to get the 6-to-1 mix. That way you have it already pre-mixed in your syringe. When you need to dose it out, you can just grab it already diluted, shoot it in your syringes and do it that way. And it's once a day for 3 days is the actual diarrhea protocol. But with any drug, after 3 days, you should change it if it's not working. But with the penicillin, you'll know a lot quicker than anything else.
And we can share that protocol as well so people have it. So switching gears a little bit, someone has asked, we have an influx of new fosters due to COVID-19. Many of them do not have experience with bottle babies, but want to give it a try. What are the best resources we can give these fosters before and during to get them prepared and best to deal with the fragility of bottle babies?
I'll go ahead and jump in here. So there are a lot of great online resources, and I'm happy to say that the National Kitten Coalition also has resources available to you. We do have webinars for setting up your foster space, for how to take care of that bottle baby kitten, its daily needs for how to feed it, how to stimulate it to urinate and defecate, how to make sure that its environment stays nice and clean, basically everything that you would need to know for taking care of that bottle baby kitten. We also have resources available on our website for nursing and pregnant queens and what to expect with that pregnant queen, with the delivery, and how to take care of that mama cat with her kittens, and even some troubleshooting, like what happens if the mama cat isn't taking care of those kittens, or what do we need to do to make sure that kittens are still thriving even though they have a mama cat. Certainly weighing kittens every day, regardless of if they are an orphaned kitten or if they're with a mama cat, is one of those things that's just too important to not say right now. So check out, you know, I know American Pets Alive has a lot of great sources. Maddie's Fund has a lot of great resources as well. So there are online resources available and tailored webinars as well.
Thank you so much. And we're always happy to create new resources too. So keep that in mind. You can always email inquiries@americanpetsalive.org. And we're going to be sharing some resources after this webinar as well. So keep them coming in the chat, what you're looking for, and we'll make sure to get those to you. So here's another question coming in from Denise, who's watching now. I have 4 4-weekers. They're all genital sucklers. I separated them. However, they are now self-suckling. Any advice?
Well, aren't you lucky? Gee, yeah, that is unique. I've only had one, I've only seen that twice with 2 kittens that were self-suckling and we had to comb them. So that was the only thing that we could do.
Yeah, and
It's
short
like,
of
no, yeah, naughty, no.
right. Yeah, and when they're sometimes, you know, if you have the time to stay with them before they fall asleep, to kind of prevent the behavior from happening, but you can't stay with them 24/7. Sometimes, I think most of the time it's a comfort thing, but sometimes it might be a hunger thing, and maybe just, you know, making that feeding 15 minutes, 20 minutes earlier than you had been, to maybe stave off some of that. Yeah, there's no black and white easy answer for that, but it's a live and learn for sure.
And I'm seeing a lot of people talking about cloth. You don't want to put cloth on them, because what you're doing, it causes urine burn. So what happens is when you put cloth up against the penis and the kitten walks around, you're literally stimulating that kitten every time it walks around, which produces urine, which holds it on there. So that's going to be a whole nother issue on itself. So unfortunately, the little crochet diapers and things like the clothing things, it doesn't work. It's going to actually kind of be worse. So unfortunately, best thing would probably be a collar. Unless you can change that. Yeah, I wouldn't even say no. I just say no to it, because you would have to be like literally watching it and checking it all the time to make sure they're not literally sitting in the urine for hours.
That's so interesting. And any tips for suckling in general?
I love Rosemarie's tips. I love the snacking. Yeah. But no, we have tried the different bitters, thiazole, calendulol. I mean, we have tried. It's such a dangerous thing. I don't know if anyone saw Jordana's post today on the American Pets Alive page, but it's a serious thing. There's a lot of kittens that get suckled a lot, and it can be life or death. So it's better just to make sure that that is not happening at all. And signs of it really quick is a wet bottom. I think I just had a question earlier today that they had a kitten that its bottom was always wet. There's 4 of them, but one was wet all the time. That would be a sign that they're being suckled. For some reason, kittens like to gang up on one. I don't know what, it's like the magic penis or whatever. I don't know, but they're all just kind of like, they pick on this poor little one. And so that's the one you want to separate from the rest of them for sure. But if anyone does have a magic trick, please let us know, because that's been something that's been really hard for us, especially you with four of them now being separated and still doing it. So
Hopping back to foster care, how do you all manage or recommend managing fosters? Do you use Google Forms? Do you put them into shelter software? And what tips or resources do you have for training new staff and new fosters? And just to follow up on that too, we've had a few people ask us that they really want to foster bottle baby kittens, but they're not sure that they can. So I know that that's sort of 3 questions at once. You could kind of talk to that.
So, sure, yeah. Okay, let me see if I can remember all of them. So the first part about the management software. So I think a lot of it really depends on the size of your organization. Of course, some of the budget, if you've got money to buy some of the software. But I could tell you personal experience when I was a foster coordinator, Excel spreadsheets went a long way for me. I was able to track just about everything I needed to in Excel, and I was already kind of familiar with that, so that really made things easier. I do know there are other programs out there. Sometimes as programs get really big, the Excel spreadsheet just is a little too overwhelming and you need something else. So that's my personal experience on that. The fostering and the new fosters, again, get some online training. Hopefully in the future, you'll also be able to get training with individuals. I know many shelters at least do some basic, even a 5 or a 10-minute training with a new foster. There are certain basics, you know, the kittens have to be fed in a prone position. They have to be kept warm. They have to be kept safe. So another thing too, for especially first-time fosters, is if your foster organization has a handful of folks who've been doing this for a while, they're probably pretty darn good at it and they know their stuff. And if you can get a mentor program going where you pair up someone who's been doing this for a while, they know your organization, they know the rules and the protocols, and can answer some of those fosters' first kind of questions, be the first line of question answering. That's one way. And then, see, now I've already forgotten the third part of that question. Tell me again, Rory.
It was about people to start fostering, but being on the fence.
Yeah, well, so yeah. Personally, I would say if you're on the fence, you know, for me, what made it go the other side of that fence was that it was going to save a life, or it had, you know, the kitten had the chance to have its life saved. If there's no place for the kitten to go to, and they have been, you know, removed from the wild, and that's a whole other situation to talk about some other time, and it's now up to a human to save that kitten's life. We need the human, we need the foster. If you're maybe not so sure about bottle babies and your organization gets a lot of bottle babies, maybe start, you know, ask for the 2.5-week-old or the 3-week-old who kind of just needs a bottle for a week or so, and then is going to transition to some wet food. So that you don't have, you know, as long to get through it, you know, and if you're the foster coordinator, you know, send those easy kittens to those new time fosters, the little bit older kittens, the healthy, plump, wonderful eating kittens. Okay, that's all I've got. I'm passing it over to you, Cassandra.
Moving on to the next live question. Any tips for relieving nasal congestion in neonates? Any new protocols for supportive care other than tube feeding, saline in nostrils?
Okay, so we do Cerenia nose drops, actually. So it's a Cerenia and sodium chloride mix. So it's going to be different than saline. It's going to have the Cerenia, and then it's going to help with the inflammation of the nasal passageway. So that way, if they're really swollen and it's hard to breathe, you can do that to addition of nebulizing. I don't know if you guys are nebulizing with upper respiratory infections as well, but yes, that has been a really key issue to prevent kittens from having to be tube fed, because you are opening up the airways and allowing it to breathe and be able to eat. And then of course, do I have time? Clavamox, if anyone's using Clavamox for upper respiratory infection, that's why it's not working. Clavamox is not made for upper respiratory infections in kittens or skin infections and things like that. Your go-to is going to be Zithromax. They have, you know, the powder that you can mix and everything like that, but that's going to be your probably go-to for upper respiratory infection.
We definitely like the nebulizing, and there's so many different formulas that your veterinarians can use depending on what's happening for the kitten, and if it's just really an upper respiratory or if it's starting to get into the lungs. So nebulizing is definitely, especially if you're going to be one of those fosters who fosters a lot or who likes to take the kittens who need that kind of medical support, nebulizers are definitely lifesavers here.
Another live question. I have lots of trouble bottle feeding neonates. When they're tiny, I almost always end up using a syringe. Even with the older ones, rarely did they learn to latch onto a nipple. I've watched lots of YouTube videos, but do you have any tips or tricks?
Yes. That's one of my favorite things because it's one of the questions that we get a lot, and in the shelter with fosters, with Good Samaritans, with people who come into the vet clinic, how to get this kitten to latch on. And sometimes it's also that the kitten seems to take a sip or two from the nipple and then they stop. And it's like, why is the kitten stopping? How come it won't continue to continue suckling? And you know, when they do the suckle and they're really getting latched on and their little ears go, and it's just a wonderful, cute thing. So we do have on kittencoalition.org, one of our resources is something like 10 top bottle feeding hints. And we talk, there's several tips in there about how to get the kitten to latch on. And I kind of thought this would come up, so I brought a little kitten bottle. 20 years ago when I started this, these bottles used to be really flexible, and the kitten would suckle and the bottle would, see, I can't even like smush it down here, but the bottle just from the kitten's nursing from it would crush in. But now they're really kind of firm, and the kitten can't continue to suckle because there's a vacuum effect that gets started in there. A little bit of milk comes out, suckle 1 or 2, but then nothing's going in there, and they're getting this vacuum, and because the bottles are so rigid now, they can't squeeze down, and the kitten just has to stop because he can't suck any harder. It's like trying to get a really thick shake out of a coffee straw or something like that. So you need to be able to help the kitten out. So one of the things you can do is just ever so slightly loosen that cap. Not so much that it's going to fall off, just so that's not cranked on there. You can just feel when it starts to let go of those threads there. And when the kitten then is nursing and suckling from the bottle, the milk's going to be coming out, and just that little bit of loosening is enough to let air get around those threads and get into the bottle, so that vacuum effect isn't created. And you'll see that there'll be tiny little air bubbles that come up. And always remember, keep that 45-degree angle so the kitten is only getting milk. You know, if you start to turn it too much like this, the kitten's going to start getting air. So nice angle, and that way the kitten can latch on and hang on to that. So, and to continue nursing. And the latching on part, I have my other little model here for you. One of the other tips on the sheet, and again, there's more you can go and check out, is I like to steady the kitten's head with my thumb and middle finger, or some people do it with their first finger. And you're not really pushing on the kitten's cheeks at all. And especially those kittens who are used to bottle feeding, they're like, oh, give me the food. And they're moving around, they're moving, like, stop, stay still. I can't even, it's like hitting a moving target. So just kind of steady their head a little bit. And if you can see just like a little bit, you're just not smushing, but it's just that little bit of support around their cheeks causes those lips to purse just ever so slightly, and they're able to get around that nipple and get a little bit better suction on it. Those are 2 of my favorite tips.
Do you have any specific or additional protocols for preemie babies?
Yeah. You want to go ahead, Casandra?
Yes. One of the most important things is we used to always think that you want to have room for the kid to crawl off the heat, so that way if it gets too hot or something like that, we have found with itty bitty, 1-day-olds, any preemies, usually under 100 grams, something like that, you do want to have a heating pad for them at all times. You don't want them to escape heat. They do, like, once they do get off the heat, they're gone. I mean, they just start fading. So you really don't want them escaping it. That would be my number 1 thing. Number 2, of course, would be if you can get those little guys on a mom, that would be the most ideal situation for them. If you're finding a preemie, that means it's probably was just born within the last couple of days, which means it didn't get any colostrum from its mom, probably. So you definitely want to make sure, if you can, do that. And singleton newborns, little tiny babies, don't do as well as with a littermate or a friend.
Excellent. So we're going to go on to our next poll question. Launch this real quick. Comfortable are you with leaving kittens where they are? Comfortable, not sure, uncomfortable. It's found outside. Sorry, people are asking me to elaborate. So, I mean, if you find kittens, there's no mom around that you can see, how comfortable are you leaving kittens where they are? Looks like 52% of people are comfortable, 39% are not sure, and 10% are comfortable. Do y'all want to talk a little bit about leaving kittens and tips on that that you've found in your time doing this?
Yeah, go ahead.
I just did a post on it today, actually. which I forgot that I didn't go back and tell everyone that I set up the whole scenario. But so basically, I have a mom with babies, and I thought it was great to put one of the babies outside by itself to see what happens, because most commonly people hear a kitten crying. That's what draws our attention to the kitten. We think it's saying, help me, when it's literally just being like, I'm lonely, or stop touching me, or whatever it is, you know, pickled kittens. So I separated the one kitten from its litter and just had it by itself and videoed it, and it literally just cried and cried and cried and cried. And it was interesting. The responses kind of were, that baby's hungry. Get that baby some food. Just basically making sure if you do see a single kitten that you're not automatically just drawn to that you're also walking around the property and making sure that that litter is just not somewhere else. That I didn't surprise the mom as she was moving them to another location. And then I interrupted the process by walking out my yard and things like that. But once again, I think I already said at the very beginning, we have seen kittens get sick from going into the shelter that wouldn't have been sick if we left them alone to begin with. So that's always the dilemma, as you know, how much human intervention is good and how much is bad.
And how often, when you say monitor, how often would you monitor? Do you leave them and then come back? And how often do you come back?
So normally what I'll answer this one and then I'll let you do Rosemarie as well. It depends on what the kitten looks like. If the kitten looks healthy, and I love to use the peach fuzz, like the baby chick hair, you know, the hair standing straight up, that is a sign that mama literally has just been licking that kitten. Something has been caring for that kitten. I personally, I will leave them alone for several hours, 5 to 6 hours, depending, like if it's at night, I would make sure that if you're worried about heat or if they feel cool, or of course, if they feel cold, you want to warm them up or anything, but if they feel completely fine, like a normal kitten, it's just crying, more likely than not, mom's going to be out there. And then, of course, if you're going to euthanize it, if you're going to take it into your shelter and just euthanize it, yes, leave it alone. Give it the 50-60% chance out on its own by itself before we just come in there and just give it no life. So I guess the answer would be, we have other tips and tricks, but I would definitely wait several hours, because mom does leave to go hunt and do several things like that. And if you're anywhere around, I'm talking about on the back porch, anywhere like that where she can smell you or anything like that, she's not going to come back. And you're going to assume that she abandoned them when she's literally just waiting for you to leave so she can get them.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes mama cat won't come back until it's dark. If she has any concern at all that you're going to be able to see her, she's not going to come back. And people think, you know, I can be 10 feet away or I could be around the corner. They're more sly than that. Mama knows where you're at, and she's not going to take the chance of coming back and revealing the nest or you know, putting herself or the other kittens, in her mind, what I'm guessing is in her mind, in danger. So yeah, we really need to be out of sight. We need to leave them alone. If they, like Casandra was saying, if they are plump and clean and there's a mama there. If they are not in immediate danger, if there's not, you know, ice storm happening right then and the kitten's already cold, mama's probably going to be back.
Excellent, thank you. So someone asked, we get a lot of kittens with diarrhea. What should we do about it?
Yes, so can I jump in on this one? Diarrhea. So yeah, wow. So that's a pretty typical thing with kittens, and that's maybe one of the things that your first-time fosters ought to know is that, I mean, kittens are cute, they're wonderful, and certainly fostering saves lives. But it's not all cuteness. Sometimes there's diarrhea and other diseases, and it's best to be upfront with your fosters about that. The thing with diarrhea, so there could be lots of causes for diarrhea. Couple things to keep in mind. With kittens, with these tiny neonate kittens and the bottle babies, we don't have a couple days to wait and see if it's going to get better. We need to start doing something right away. So we need to provide supportive care. We need to be monitoring their hydration very well, and we need to be monitoring their weight even extra. You should be weighing them at least once a day, if not with every feeding before and after, and making sure that they're not losing weight, which is usually a lot of hydration weight. Anyway, so the diarrhea situation, back to that. A lot of times, one of my favorite things about diarrhea, if that sounds weird, is that a lot of the times diarrhea is our fault. We as caregivers are feeding the kittens too much, we're feeding them too often, or we're feeding them food that's too rich. And a lot of times, if we fix those three things, you know, pull back a little bit on how frequently we feed them as the kittens grow, that time period between feedings will need to expand as well. We have a feeding guideline on our website that you're welcome to look at and download as it's a guideline. It is not a hard and fast rules. So spread out that feeding time. We also know, and sometimes even with older kittens who are now eating wet food on their own, we love to see them eat, and isn't that great? And we give them too much wet food. Sometimes we need to do a little tough love, give them enough certainly that they're going to meet their nutritional needs, they're still going to be gaining weight, but if they're eating too much, that stool is going to start getting watery. And likewise, the food that's too rich. And so we might have to adjust the formula, or we might have to give them some chicken and rice kind of wet food if they're already eating on their own, rather than something that's a richer food. Those are my three big tips. Then, of course, we have to look at bacterial infections, viral infections, parasitic infections, which could certainly be causes for diarrhea. And even some of the medications and some of the dewormers that we give them can cause some diarrhea or some soft stool the day after deworming, or from some of the antibiotics that they get. So, Casandra, do you want to jump in? I know you guys get a lot of this too.
Oh yes, we laugh that anyone who works in the nursery and doesn't know how to spell diarrhea by the end of the season is not a true volunteer, because literally that's just our life. Another problem with diarrhea is a lot of people think soft kitten poop is diarrhea. They just assume Tootsie Rolls are the way to always go. Not with bottle babies. It can be softer, same with gruel babies, things like that. But we like to dilute the milk before we give it to them, because we hear of shelters having diarrhea and constipation issues. So it's just like one of the each, right? So the formula is, you know, not as easy on the tummy as mommy's milk. So what we do is for the first 4 feedings, we will dilute the milk an 8-to-1 ratio. So that's going to be 1 part powder, 8 parts water for the first 4 feedings. After that, you're going to increase it a little bit more. So you're going to do a 4-to-1. So 4 parts powder, 1 part water. Wait, no, 1 part powder, 4 parts water. Yeah, you'll know for a fact if you put too much powder and not enough water, you're going to have sludge. So do that for the next 4 feedings, and then you'll get them to the 2-to-1. It's going to be about 24 hours of the diluted milk. So their weight will kind of plateau at first when you first get them, but you won't have the opposite effect where they just drop in weight because of the diarrhea that's coming out of them. It's just kind of hard on their little GI tracts.
Excellent, thank you. So we have a question from Amon Jordan. What is an acceptable alternative for kitten formula if commercial kitten replacer is not available in their country? I know many rescuers are fans of goat's milk, but it's also difficult to find here. Vets here commonly recommend lactose-free baby formula. Is there an acceptable alternative for long-term use? If not, what are safe substitutes? Tough question.
Take it away, Rosemarie. No, I'm just kidding.
That is a tough question. Yeah, there's a real nice chart from, I believe it's the University of Wisconsin, that did a milk content comparison, you know, from cats and dogs and cows and whales and humans and you know, basically everyone who produces and drinks milk. And if you take a look for that chart, so even the difference between the puppy Esbalac, I don't know if you're able to get puppy milk replacer, is its nutritional content in comparison to the goat's milk is maybe a little closer in some areas. There's certainly been plenty of cases where kittens have survived on goat's milk. We don't recommend it as a long-term, but I don't really have, wow, this is really a tough question. I don't really have a long-term solution for, even homemade versions, they're gonna lack the trace minerals. There's, and kittens need taurine and other things to grow properly and to not just survive, but to develop properly. So yeah, that's really tough. Help me out here, Casandra.
It's a good question. And I think what we can do is try to outsource it a little bit and get back to you, Nina. So we'll try to post that around a couple of places and see if we can get you a good answer for that.
Thanks for stumping us, Nina.
Yeah.
So another question about homemade electrolyte fluids. Are they as effective as Pedialyte?
I have no idea.
Awesome.
I don't know that there's ever been studies, and plus, yeah, the homemade electrolytes, I guess, there would be different recipes. So yeah, I'm not familiar with anything to know one way or the other.
And my thing is, I don't know if y'all know, but once you open up Pedialyte, it's only good for 48 hours, right? So as a foster, if I'm only fostering a litter of kittens, I'm not going to be using a thing of Pedialyte within 48 hours. We don't use any additional extra electrolytes or anything with our kittens. We've just learned that, of course, APA is broke. I know somebody asked a question about shoestring budget. Hello, all of our protocols are shoestring budget. It's all like bare minimum stuff. So yeah, we try to cut it out, all the extra stuff, but I mean, I would, yeah, on the same boat. I don't know any homemade electrolytes anyway.
Great. So can you speak to tube feeding? When should tube feeding be considered?
Yes. So, yeah, tube feeding is a tough one because it can save a life and it can end it just like that at the same time. It is simple. So sometimes when people first do it, they're like, oh, why am I spending all this amount of time syringe feeding this kitten? They're 5% of their body weight, things like that, when I can just do it in a tube in 2 seconds. So the only time you should do it is if you have a kitten who has a cleft palate, they can't suckle. And so what you'll do is they can't suckle without it getting into their lungs. So we'll tube feed them until they can get old enough to get, surgery. Another one would be a preemie, a small kitten that is too weak to suckle. So like your 60 grammers, your 70 grammers, things like that. Those are going to be the ones that you definitely want to tube feed for a while to get their strength up, and then they'll start suckling. A good sign to know when to stop is when they start suckling on the tube. So when you put the tube in their mouth and the milk hits their belly, and then all of a sudden they start going, you don't need to tube them anymore. They got the strength there. And then C would be upper respiratory infection. So if a kitten safely cannot take milk in, so if a kitten's mouth breathing, and then every time it opens his mouth, you shoot milk in it, he's gonna go into his lungs. And so that's not safe, but we need time for the medicine to work in order to get him to start breathing better so he can suckle again. So that's another time I would tube feed, just once again to get the strength up, to keep him alive until the medicine can actually do what it's supposed to do.
Excellent. Anything to add, Rosemarie?
Yeah, I'm good with that. And I've always said kittens will always choose breathing over eating, and so they're not going to be able to suckle from that bottle, and so we need to be able to help them out until they can breathe better. And my only caution is, if you haven't learned how to tube feed, learn how to do it. It's not something that you should take lightly. If you do it right, it's great. If you do it wrong, fluid goes into the kitten's lungs, they can drown, or they could get an infection because of the milk that's in those lungs. So just learn how to do it well, and especially the first time you do it. You can certainly preview with videos and then have someone there with you, hands-on, especially that first time, so you feel how things go.
Excellent.
Yeah, it's a feeling. It's weird. It is a feeling. Once you get into the right tube, it just slides. It literally just goes right on down. And then of course, you know, I have a video marking the tube to make sure you are in the stomach. If the line is way out here, then you know you're in the lungs, you're not in the stomach. The line should be at the tip of the mouth. So little tips and tricks like that helps as well.
Great, thank you. We have about 8 more minutes and a lot more questions to get through. If we don't get to your questions, we will try to answer them as best we can offline. Kalista has asked, I have a mama with a large group of kittens. I'm feeding her well, dry kibble at all times, canned food, daily water. Kittens are not gaining weight. I've offered kitten formula, but they're not interested. Is there anything else I can do to help mama feed these kittens?
So sometimes we do have to supplement mama. She might not be producing enough milk. The litter might be a large litter. We should definitely, again, I mentioned it already, but every foster caregiver, every shelter, we should be weighing those kittens every day, making sure that they're gaining weight. And sometimes even the kittens, they look like they're suckling from mama and they're doing that little making biscuits thing. We don't know that they're getting enough milk unless we weigh those kittens. So if they are not gaining weight and consistently, then we need to supplement them with the bottle. Yeah, and so again, I was a little distracted, so if I'm missing part of that question, Cassandra can fill in there.
I'm just gonna try to, oh, go ahead.
My big question would be, how old are the kittens? Because when a mom first gives birth, the kittens will plateau like the first day or two because mom's producing the colostrum and things like that. So you sometimes when they're born, you won't see a huge jump the first day or two. But if you are, I mean, this is how I like doing my pregnant moms or pregnant or nursing. If the plate's empty, fill it up for that mom. It doesn't matter. It's like me when I was pregnant. I'm just like, eat, eat, eat. There's a good cause, right? That's what we're doing it for. So, and make sure it's kitten food, that you're doing kitten kibble and kitten wet food, because that's going to have higher calories. So if you're doing an all life stages or a cat food, you want to make sure that you're switching that to kitten brand or kitten type food.
Excellent. And what age do you start deworming?
2 weeks.
And I say eyes open because we don't really know, like, you know, if it's a 10-day-old or a 14-day-old. So we make our protocol pretty simple. If a kitten comes in with its eyes open, it gets dewormed. And then every 2 weeks from there.
Yeah, definitely important to keep it on the schedule. One deworming for most dewormers is not going to do it. They have to have that follow-up dewormer on schedule because of the parasite's life cycle.
Maddie says, I've heard of colostrum replacers and supplements for kittens who may not have gotten it from mom. Are these recommended and effective?
So we've never tried it. I know the milk replacers has colostrum already made into it and probiotics or whatever and that kind of stuff. But no, we have never, in our program, we've never additionally given any colostrum or anything like that. And we haven't really seen like a huge issue, but Rosemarie.
Yeah, not so much with colostrum replacer. And again, yeah, there's some milks that are milk formula replacers that have it in there. That's usually bovine colostrum. There are some studies that are happening, and some shelters have had success with using serum from an adult to give some passive immunity to a kitten who might not have had colostrum. And that's, you know, something that may be coming up more and more in the future as well.
Do you use probiotics?
Yes. yeah, several good brands out there. There's some powders, there's some gels. Yeah, probiotics help get that gut back in order, help with the good bacteria. And like with antibiotics, the antibiotics, sometimes kittens have diarrhea because the antibiotics kill both the bad bacteria and the good bacteria. And so we sometimes need to use those probiotics to get that gut back in shape again.
Excellent. And we're going to end with one last question. And thanks everyone for being here. If this has been helpful and you would like us to host more of these, please send us an email and fill out the survey that you'll be getting after this webinar as well. Last question, any tips for getting a mama cat to take in other kittens?
The tip is you literally just hold the kitten up to the mom and she will tell you if she wants it or not. You don't have to rub the kitten on the blankets. You don't have to grab the litter mates and mix it with their smell. You literally just go, what you think? And she will sniff it. You know, she does that that little lip curl thing where they sniff it really well. Groom it. Or I actually have a video where the mom just literally took it out of my hand. She was just like, thank you, that's mine. You will know right then and there. If she doesn't want it, she will hiss and swat immediately. She's just like, no, I don't want it. So you don't ever have to worry about putting a kitten in there and then like a couple of days later, the mom's like, yeah, I don't want it anymore. They're really great. Another tip I guess would be is you want to add kittens that are all around the same weight. Doesn't matter about age. It doesn't matter if one has their eyes open and the other one doesn't. The big thing is you don't want Big Daddy pushing out all the little babies off the nipple to where then they start losing weight. So all within the same age range. And of course, kittens need to be healthy. You don't want to add sick kittens to a mom. That's just a whole hot mess. So you want to look at the kitten, make sure you're not seeing any visible signs of illness. Testing for FELV to see if they're negative is something else we do. And then, yeah, if you can get mama like right when she gives birth, her hormones are crazy. That's why we can't hold moms and babies in the nurseries because their hormones are so crazy. Every time we stimulate a kitten and it cries, she stands up and she's like, give it to me, give it to me. So then she's not laying down for her kittens and not letting them nurse. So yeah, they're great moms. They're easy to add. It's so simple to add to. And then you just weigh everyone like you would every day. Another tip would be make sure that you present the kitten when it's hungry. I know everyone, as soon as we get that kitten and we want to feed it, we want to make sure that we don't know how long it's been hungry, yada, yada, yada. You need to know that, that the kitten is going to latch. That seems to be the hardest thing is we feed the kitten, then we put it onto a nursing mom, and then the foster at 1 a.m., 2 o'clock in the morning realizes, hey, it's not latching. What do I do now? So you want to know immediately if that kitten's going to latch or not. If it ain't, go ahead and make it a bottle baby. If not, or if mama decides not to accept it as well. Oh, and then one other thing, I'm so sorry. If a mom has already had a litter and they're all big and have moved on, then you want to make sure the probability of her laying down for another brand new litter that you add to her is going to be extremely low. It seems like once they've got that freedom, once they found that window still to lay in, the sun, all that stuff, they're just like, no thanks, I've done my part, things like that. So your best bet is going to be sneaking that 1 or 2 in a litter that she's already given birth to.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. This has been excellent, and I hope that it's been meaningful for folks. I want to say thank you again to Casandra and to Rosemarie, and thank you so much for to our sponsor, Royal Canin, for making this webinar possible. We'll be sending protocols out that were mentioned and trying to capture as many more of these questions as we can and answer them. I hope you have
everyone.
a wonderful day, and thank you.
Yes, thank you, Royal Canin, for sponsoring this webinar. We really appreciate it. And I'm so happy to see so many fosters and volunteers on this call. That really made my little heart flutter that the community is coming up and we're taking the kittens on. So yeah.
Yes. Lots of good stuff happening out there for kittens. Thanks to the people who are helping them. Thank you for all I can. Thank you to Casandra, Rory, and American Pets Alive. You guys rock.
You rock. Thank you so much. And we will see you all soon.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.